Codes. 1. Antioxidant is not a code requirement. It can be stated as a recommendation by the manufacturer. 2. Under certain circumstances, you can use an OCPD that has an ampere rating higher than the conductor's ampacity size rating, such as some motor circuits and HVAC equipment circuitry. 12. AWG on a 30A breaker or fuse, NEC 240.4G. 3. Anti-shorts are not required on MC cable per the code. For bundling derating does not apply where the bundled portion of conductors is not over 10 nor over 10% of the total length of the run. NEC 310.15A2. 5. A length of EMT conduit under 3 in length still technically requires a strap. NEC 358.30. 6. PVC, IMC and RMC conduits are required to have plastic bushings no matter the size of the conduit or wire installed in it. NEC 300.4F, unless the design of the box, fitting, or enclosure is such as to afford equivalent protection, 342.46 and 344.46. 7. You are allowed to pass up to 10 and 12 halves MC cables through a hole such as in a stud without derating them, provided they maintain spacing before and after the hole. NEC 310.15B3A4. 8. Splices are allowed inside panel boards. 9. Boxes are not required to be listed unless used as an equipment ground, are used in a damp, wet or classified location, or are used in air handling space. However, they must still be acceptable to the local AHJ. NEC 250.118, 314.15, 300.22, C3. 10. Zip ties or cable ties, when used to strap types AC, MC or NM cables, and etc., must be listed and identified for means of securing and supporting. NEC 334.30. 11. Straps for raceways and cables are not required to be listed, unless specifically called out in the NEC or by the manufacturer's instructions. Straps must also be of mechanical strength acceptable to the local AHJ. According to CMP 8, straps are not considered fittings. 12. NM cables does not require insulated staples. 13. The NEC does not require you to pull a wire-type equipment ground wire if your wiring method is listed as an equipment grounding conductor and is also grounded, bonded, correctly. There may be specific exceptions to this, such as patient care areas of healthcare facilities where a wire-type EGC is required in addition to a metallic wiring method. NEC 250.118, 517.13. 14. Raceway fill does not apply to communication circuit wires per the NEC, though most cable manufacturers impose limits in their written instructions. NEC 800.110b, 110.3b. 15. A conduit less than 24 inches in length is subject to 60% max fill, which in practice is almost as full as you could physically fill the conduit with wires. Conduits less than 24 inches in length are not subject to derating. NEC Chapter 9, Table 1, Note 4. NEC Electrical Code Myths. 3. 16. Ungrounded conductor phasing colors only need to be applied if there is more than one voltage system supplying power within the premises. NEC 210.5, C1. 17. A 20 amp breaker is rated for 20 amperes. If it is feeding a continuous load, it may only be loaded to 80%. Circuit breakers must carry 110% of their rated load indefinitely. UL 489 Product Standards. 1815 amp receptacles are permitted on 20 amp circuits, provided there is more than one single receptacle. 20 amp receptacles are not permitted on 15 amp circuits. NEC 210.21b. 19120/208 volt system conductors and 277/480 volt system conductors may, generally, share the same raceway, box or enclosure, and even cable as long as the insulation rating is not less than the maximum circuit voltage. NEC 300.3 C1. 20. If you pull spare conductors, and used and capped off, from a switch box to a ceiling outlet box, and the ceiling outlet box is in a suitable future location for a ceiling fan, the box must be a ceiling fan rated box at the time of original installation. NEC 314.27. 21 neutrals are only required to be at switch boxes if they control lighting loads, and there are no provisions to pull a neutral in later without removing building finishes, cables, or conduits. NEC 404.2C 1-4. 22 branch circuits and feeders bond bushings are only required on circuits 250 volts to ground or greater that are also installed in a wiring method which passes through a concentric or eccentric knockout that is not listed for use without bonding bushings. NEC 250.97. 23 neutrals do not count as current carrying in regards to NEC 310.15, B3, if shared between three phases of a multi-wire branch circuit from a Y-connected source, unless carrying predominantly non-linear loads. NEC 310.15, B5C. 24 parallel feeds are permitted to be installed in an isolated phase manner, all phase A in a conduit, all phase B in a conduit, etc., provided the raceway is non-metallic and does not end in the solid metallic wall top or bottom of a metal enclosure. NEC 300.20A. 25 emergency system circuits are not permitted to be multi-wire branch circuits that share a neutral, NEC 700.19. 26 minus a few exceptions, emergency system or life safety branch/critical equipment branch conductors of an essential electrical system within a healthcare facility shall not share raceways or enclosures including channels within a multi-channel raceway with normal system conductors. NEC 700.10, B, 517.31, C, 517.42, D. 27 metal pole boxes which contain no splices are not required to be bonded by a wire-type equipment ground. NEC 250.148. 28 flexible conduit is permitted to be run longer than 6 feet. FMC is not permitted to be run longer than 6 feet when installed without a separate equipment ground. FMC used as an equipment ground must have a maximum circuit OCPD of 20 amperes, be 1 1/4 or smaller, and cannot be installed to prevent vibration transmission. NEC 250.118. 29 if breakers are installed in a vertical orientation, up must be the on position. NEC 240.81. 30 in general, the maximum permitted length of transformer secondary conductors installed indoors before terminating in an OCPD is 10 feet. NEC 240.21. 31 line and load conductors are permitted to be in the same raceway, provided they are not service conductors and the load conductors are not fed from a VFD. NEC 230.7. 32 angle-type MC connectors are not required to be accessible. Angle FMC and LFMC connectors are required to be accessible. NEC 350.42. 33 Class 1 wiring is generally not allowed to occupy raceways and enclosures with Class 2 wiring. However, they may be shared if the markings on the Class 2 power supply are eliminated and all wiring is installed in a Class 1 manner. NEC 725.130 AEX2. NEC Electrical Code Myths. 4. 34 Adding AFCI protection may be required even if all you are doing is changing out a receptacle. The circuit does not necessarily have to be extended. NEC 406.4 D4, 35 transformers are not required to be connected with flexible conduit types. 36 With the exception of backstab style, all receptacles are listed for use with both solid and stranded wire unless explicitly stated in the instructions. 37 Equipment grounds still count towards raceway fill calculations. All equipment grounds count as a single conductor volume, under the largest equipment ground in the box/enclosure when performing a box fill calculation. NEC 314.16, B5, 38 modifications of listed products beyond what is permitted in the manufacturer's instructions or the NEC void the listing of the product. Where the product is required to be listed, this may make the product unusable from a code compliance standpoint. 39. There is NO code section limiting a single bend in a conduit to 90 degrees. 40. Cable stackers are not mandatory for securing and supporting type NM cables. NEC 334.30. 41. Parking lot light poles do not require a ground rod. But metal poles used for the support of luminaires are required to be connected to an equipment grounding conductor of a type recognized in NEC 250.118 for 10.30 B